They didn't miss home, they missed the spotlight, and now the spotlight is fading so loudly you can practically hear it crackling. Because let's be honest, if you walk away from a kingdom with cameras chasing you like your oxygen, and then suddenly the world stops clapping, that's when the panic starts. That's when the maybe we should go back whispers begin. And right now, the whispers around Harry and Meghan are not soft. They're screaming. See, the vibe is not sweet reunion. The vibe is, uh-oh, the California dream is slipping, and the UK is the only stage left that still knows their names by heart. And the way people are talking, it's messy, it's heated, it's brutal. Because the story being passed around is that they once couldn't wait to escape Britain, but now Britain is suddenly the place they're considering again. Not because the air is fresher, not because the tea tastes better, but because the brand needs CPR. Let me paint the scene the way the gossip circles painted. They left the royal family and framed it like freedom, like they were stepping out of the machine, out of the pressure, out of the endless headline. They said they wanted a normal life, privacy, peace, a reset, a big deep breath away from the palace drama. And for a second, people believed it. For a second, it sounded noble. Like, okay, fair. Who wouldn't want to breathe? But then the next chapter started, and it was giving the opposite of privacy. Because the moment they landed outside the royal bubble, the deals started flying in like confetti. Big, shiny headline-making deals. Netflix, Spotify, publishing. The kind of contracts that don't whisper we want peace, they shout we want attention, paid in installments. And that's where the side-eye started. Because the public doesn't mind reinvention, but they hate contradictions. And this contradiction was loud. We want privacy, followed by here's our documentary, our podcast, our book, and our entire life story packaged for streaming. Like, be serious.
Would explain the fact that she is literally plotting to return to the United Kingdom, a country that she has decried as racist, a country where, as a result of her treatment of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she is despised, she will be booed. She's not at threat, by the way, in terms of her safety, but reputationally, absolutely.
And the thing is, once you step into that commercial world, you're not royalty anymore, you're a product. And products don't get sympathy, they get reviews, they get ratings, they get renewals, or they get cut. So imagine the pressure, imagine the expectation, imagine them thinking, okay, we left the palace, but we're still famous, we're still powerful, we're still irresistible. Except fame is fickle, and Hollywood is colder than Buckingham in January. Because here's what the rumor mill keeps circling back to. Those glossy deals, they didn't turn into the unstoppable empire people expected. The glossy dream started stalling. First, it looked like a fairy tale business pivot. Then it started looking like a slow motion unraveling. Netflix, huge platform, huge hype. Spotify, major signing, big talk. Penguin Books, massive publishing muscle. On paper, it screamed they're about to dominate. But off paper, people started asking, where is the content? Where is the hit? Where is the impact? Because celebrity alone doesn't keep the lights on forever, not when everyone else is also famous, also loud, also competing for the same attention. And suddenly, the story shifts from power couple to pressure cooker.
But I hope that helps you understand what it had come to. That I would step my family back from all I have ever known. To take a step forward into what I hope can be a more peaceful life.
Now, this is where it gets deliciously tense, because the whispers don't just say things didn't work. The whispers say things collapsed in a way that made executives regret ever saying yes. And you can feel the embarrassment in the air when the conversation turns to Spotify. Because the chatter goes, Meghan had the podcast moment, the big rollout, the grand branding, and then boom, after one season, it's over. Not taking a break, not coming back stronger, just done. And in gossip terms, done is never just done. Done means there were meetings. There were awkward calls, there were disappointed faces, there were people politely saying we're moving in a different direction while quietly sliding the contract into a drawer and locking it. And when that happened, the narrative bruised, because once one major deal drops you, everyone else starts watching. The industry is petty like that. One fall, and suddenly people treat you like a risky investment.
The Duchess of Sussex have signed a multi-year deal to produce films and series for Netflix, no less.
Then there's Netflix. And the way people talk about Netflix is, oof, because it's not just it slowed down, it's that the momentum, whatever it was, started to feel weirdly stuck, like a car revving but not moving. And the gossip voice says it like this. They thought they'd be the new royal era Kardashians, but with prestige. Except prestige doesn't come from titles alone. It comes from execution. And when execution is messy, the platform gets restless. And then that cooking show chatter hit, and the tone got even sharper. because now people weren't just questioning output, they were questioning judgment. The kind of judgment that makes an executive sit back later and go, why did we approve this? You know that energy? The energy of a decision that felt exciting at the party and then humiliating the next morning? That.
Everything is temporary.
It's over. Harry and Meghan's estimated $25 million podcast deal canceled after less than a year.
My wife and I we're moving on.
And here's where the returning to the UK storyline starts to look less like a sentimental homecoming and more like a strategic scramble. Because when the big, shiny American plan starts wobbling, what do? You go back to the one place where your name is still an event. Not because the crowd loves you, not because the newspapers are gentle, but because Britain has one thing California can't manufacture: royal gravity. In the UK, they're not just celebrities. They're still attached to the royal family in the public imagination, whether people like them or hate them. And hate, my friend, is still attention. Hate still trends. Hate still sells headlines. And the rumblings are brutal, that their light has dimmed, that the machine they built outside the monarchy isn't printing the shine they expected, and that returning to the UK is the fastest way to force the world to look again. Love them or boo them, either way the cameras come out. It's not we miss it, it's we need it. And you can almost feel the tension in how people talk about Harry specifically, like he's caught between pride and reality, between the story he told about leaving and the life he's actually living now. Because the more the commercial wins don't land, the more the question gets louder. What exactly are they selling if they aren't selling royalty? And that's why the UK becomes a temptation. The shortcut, the stage with built-in relevance. But the part they can't control, the reception. Because a return isn't a reset button, it's a confrontation. It's walking back into a country where people remember every interview, every headline, every claim, every fallout. And the gossip circles are already foaming at the mouth over what it would look like. Publicly, reputationally, emotionally. Would they be welcomed? Would they be iced out? Would they be treated like prodigal royals or like reality TV intruders? And now the juiciest question of all starts creeping in. The one nobody wants to say too loudly, but everybody's thinking, what if this return isn't about family at all? What if it's about survival? Because here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, but everybody in the gossip pipeline already has. This isn't nostalgia. This isn't healing. This isn't family first. This is leverage. And once you see it that way, everything snaps into focus. Because suddenly the timing makes sense. The urgency makes sense. The sudden softening of tone, the carefully chosen words, the almost rehearsed maybe we'll come back energy, it's not emotional. It's tactical. The chatter says this return isn't about being welcomed, it's about being needed. Because there's one thing the UK still represents that America never guaranteed: legitimacy, power by proximity, relevance that doesn't depend on algorithms, ratings, or streaming metrics. And right now, legitimacy is exactly what the brand is starving for. See, when you're outside the royal system, everything you do has to perform. Every project has to justify its budget. Every appearance has to generate buzz. Every release has to convert attention into money. But inside the royal orbit, your mere presence is news. You don't need a hit. You are the hit. And that's why the return conversation feels less like a family reunion and more like a negotiation. Because here's what the insiders are whispering: this trip isn't just symbolic. It's strategic pressure wrapped in polite language. Security. That's the word that keeps popping up like a ghost that won't stay buried. Because behind all the emotional storytelling, there's a very cold, very expensive reality. Protection costs money. A lot of it. And paying for it privately, that's not glamorous, that's not sustainable, that's not the fairy tale ending anyone imagined. So the theory goes like this, and it's making the rounds fast. By physically returning to the UK, by placing themselves back into the public royal sphere, they strengthen their case. They make it harder for officials to say no. They make it a political problem instead of a personal one. And once it's political, the tone changes. Because now it's not just two former royals asking for security, it's two high-profile figures potentially causing public disruption if they're denied. It becomes easier to justify, easier to explain, easier to approve. And if that security battle is won, everything changes. Suddenly, UK appearances become cheaper, safer, more frequent. Suddenly, the door isn't just cracked, it's open. And once it's open, relevance walks right back in. But here's where it gets messy. Because winning the logistics doesn't mean winning the people. The rumor mill is ruthless about this part. Britain hasn't softened. The memory hasn't faded. The interviews are still fresh. The accusations still sting. The image of them walking away publicly, loudly, emotionally hasn't been rewritten. So the idea of them returning, it's not being received with warm nostalgia. It's being received with folded arms and raised eyebrows. And the whispers say Meghan knows it. She knows she won't be adored. She knows she'll be scrutinized. She knows the boos are a possibility, not because she's unsafe, but because she's controversial. And yet, they're still willing to step back into that fire, which tells you everything. Because nobody walks into hostility unless the payoff is worth it. And the payoff? Visibility, power, narrative control. Because even negative press in the UK travels louder than polite indifference in California. And here's where Harry's role becomes the emotional pressure point. Because people talk about him like he's torn, like he's standing between two realities, the one he left and the one that didn't deliver what he expected. There's gossip that he believed stepping away would give him freedom without consequence, that the title would follow him, that the respect would remain automatic, that the world would always treat him as a prince first, a content creator second. But Hollywood doesn't bow. Hollywood invoices. And when the deals start drying up, when the executives stop calling, when the projects stop moving at lightning speed, that's when legacy suddenly feels valuable again. And that's when the UK stops being the past and starts looking like the future. Now let's talk about the part that makes this whole thing feel explosive, the reaction waiting for them. Because returning doesn't erase history, it reopens it. Every claim, every interview, every tearful moment, every line drawn in public, all of it comes back up for judgment. And the public isn't subtle. Some will see it as hypocrisy, others will see it as desperation, some will frame it as arrogance, others as survival. But almost nobody will see it as innocent. And that's the risk. Because once you return, you can't pretend the exit never happened. You can't edit the past. You can only walk straight into it and hope the cameras spin the right way. And the cruel irony, the monarchy doesn't need them. That's the part that stings the most in the gossip world. The institution survived. The headlines moved on. The machine kept rolling. And that's exactly why the return feels so loaded, because it's not a reunion of equals. It's a re-entry into a hierarchy that kept going without you. So the question buzzing everywhere isn't will they return? It's what happens if they do. Do they regain relevance or confirm the doubts? Do they reclaim power or expose vulnerability? Do they control the narrative or become trapped in it again? Because once you step back onto that stage, the audience isn't silent. They're loud, they're opinionated, and they're not obligated to clap. And that's what makes this moment so dangerously fascinating. Because this isn't about love or loyalty or forgiveness. It's about what happens when the escape plan doesn't deliver the fairy tale, and the only place left to go is the one you swore you'd never need again. And when the curtain rises on that return, the world won't be watching to welcome them back. They'll be watching to see who blinks first, to see who blinks first, to see who blinks first, to see who...